Oh my goodness. This is what we're talking about: long-term tax planning and getting out there in those 3, 5, and 10-year windows. Have you used these before? I mean, I've used them for a couple of my clients, and they seem to like them.
So let me talk about the good and the bad. So the good of them is, right, like I have ours, let's say I sold my business, I have this large capital gain. Great. I can put that money into a qualified opportunity zone. It gets deferred to 2026. And then if I leave it in for 10 years, the growth on the opportunity zone is tax-free. Amazing. Downside about these are typically qualified opportunity zones have lower expected returns on the investment than if you typically some other investment. So it's sometimes hard to find good ones to invest in that, meet what you want, right? It's really great to defer taxes, but if for 10 years you have $1 million in investment that gets 1% rate of return or 3% rate of return relative to, some other investment, doesn't work well. The other thing that I struggle with on them is that, like, as fiduciaries, if we have an investment that fits our clients, we can't just propose it to one client, right? If we find a great qualified opportunity zone, all of our clients have to be made aware of that one investment. And so depending on firm size, and, I partner with this ultra high net worth firm, their client base is, almost $5 billion. Very few opportunity zones would they be big enough where their firm wouldn't have a risk of, like, we are the entire fund. But overall, I think amazing strategy. It's all about finding the right operators where you can see the track records of how they've done. I do know a few, and I think the benefits are really great. And hopefully the tax laws around this change where deferral isn't 2026, it gets pushed out, and maybe they make it like it's a 5-year deferral or, whatever, because pretty soon here in 2024, 2025, the deferral is so short that investment has to be super good.
Yeah, I like using the opportunities. You make great points right there. I mean, because you have to have the right clients in order to want to take care of these opportunities.
It is a 10-year lockup, right? So you need no liquidity from that.
Right. That's what I was about to say. The lockup, but the 10 years, but also there's windows of 3 and 5 years too. I mean,
where
so
you get still some,
right
amount of tax.
Yeah. Right. So you don't necessarily have to have that 10. I mean, I used to do alternative investments, and the illiquidity premium was what was it, and the risk was it. And here in the opportunity zones, that's why I said 3, 5, 10-year windows, because you do have different tax exits in the code right there. I mean, so it's also value based for the client too. It's like if they do have those order of operation type of things already taken care of, maxing out your retirements and going down stuff that we talked about today. And then somebody says, okay, well, I have a value system of reinvesting in some areas. And then you have urban development that's going on. So you necessarily don't have low rates. You could potentially have higher rates. Again, it takes study in order to do that. But so I think it's a value add. And also to what is that additional idea beyond after having your order of operations taken care of?
Yeah. And I think there's really important planning here around that year and the taxes owed, and making sure, because if you're going to leave that invest for 10 years, that's not probably going to be the payout for the taxes. So people who, put $1 million into deferred capital gain, and you might have $300,000 of taxes, you got to make sure you do have the liquidity from somewhere else. Right. And I guess the other point just to make about it is I really do think that they are amazing strategies when you can find the right one, and the higher net worth you are, actually the better. Because if you sell a business and you have $20 million, right, it's pretty easy to carve out 2 or 3, right? And that can still save you and defer $1 million of taxes. That can be really impactful. I think it's harder when you're like, I just sold a business for $700,000. I've barely been saving, investing for a long time. Like, deferring taxes sounds great, but in reality, like, I do need a way to, like, catch up of my retirement goals. So I think it is all about, like, the right strategy for the right person with the right planning. And when you check those boxes, it's a pretty hard strategy to beat.
Yep. And we'll just wrap up with this because we can go on tax planning all day. I would say I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said, which is some ideas. I think the top 4, or not the top 4, but the 4 that we discussed before this 5th one, there's so many other check boxes that you can do, even as a high income earner, to mitigate your taxes, but also maximize your return, live life now, maximize your retirement later, all these things, and not get so creative sometimes, with ideas, because there's a long list before you get to those. Oh, what's your additional idea? Because something you mentioned, influencers. I mean, there's good ones and bad ones, but yeah, what about those? Just because you hear it on social media or from your friends or in the news or whatever, it may not apply.